It's exciting because now this is going to be live on the radio.
Oh,
We've decided.
Yeah,
so
this
exciting.
is actually broadcasting live on Z100 as we speak.
So you're the owner of Suffolk Family Therapy.
My name is Jamie Vollmoeller. I'm the owner of Suffolk Family Therapy. Although family therapy is in our name, we actually specialize in trauma work. We are likely rebranding to Long Island EMDR in the next year. It takes a while with the state to get everything approved, but we specialize in trauma work and EMDR. So EMDR, because most of you probably don't know what that is.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this.
Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is a really so it's actually called eye movement desensitization because it started out with eye movement. So like and you'd follow my fingers like this. Mm-hmm. I move for the listeners, I'm moving my fingers back and forth, and he follows them.
Oh, this is on
eyes.
video. It's all happening.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that we were doing video as well. That's awesome. So it goes back and forth, right? It mimics REM sleep. So for anyone who doesn't know what REM sleep is, it's when you're dreaming. And they theorize that that's how your brain is trying to heal itself with your dreams. Like your brain is trying to make other connections. Mm-hmm. So they don't know much about exactly how it works or why it works. They just know it works. And it makes, like, they've done CAT scans and MRIs that show that it if you have trauma, it's like an isolated network in your brain, right? So let's say you were at, your dad died when you were young, and the smell of flowers now like is a trigger for you to have flashbacks to all those sad feelings of the funeral, sure. Right? It's because when that happened, your brain like is wired because of evolution for threats, right? So anything that happens that's really dysregulating for us, our brain categorizes that differently. So when your brain categorizes it differently, everyone's just staring at me.
No. I'm staring at Eric off screen here because he's making noise and it was loud.
So your brain categorizes it differently. So it doesn't have the access to the logical portion of your brain. Mm-hmm. So all of the things in your life that would tell you flowers are not actually a threat are not available because that trauma network is being pinged. So what EMDR does, either through the eye movements or what they found out later, is that any form of what we call bilateral stimulation, so tapping either side of your body. For people who are blind, they actually have headphones that'll do like buzzing on alternate sides of your ears. Or you could even do like marching. So since we're on the air, yeah, for our super intensive people, we have them do like a tapping and a marching. And then sometimes we have them do like crazy taps. I don't know. It depends on the person. But that bilateral stimulation helps your brain make those connections.
So you're reprogramming
the brain.
The brain and
so
reprogramming pathways.
Unlike CBT, right? The big difference for me and why I'm so passionate about EMDR, like my goal
What is CBT?
Oh, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay.
So
is that talking?
Yeah,
like
cognitive behavioral therapy is more like, this is your thought, it causes this feeling, which causes this behavior. So if you change your thought, you change your feeling, you change your behavior, you change your result. EMDR is more what we call like bottom up. So it's more in your body. Mm-hmm. So EMDR will actually, because it's not just like the flashbacks you get, right? It's also like if something pings you that's related to your trauma, you get like those stomach pains or your muscles get tight. Like you have a physical body reaction when you have trauma and you're exposed to something that reminds you of that trauma.
So you almost cause physical stress instead of causing mental stress to change the thought that triggers the
So we don't
action.
cause the physical stress, but it requires you to like kind of sit with your feelings. And as a trauma kid myself, which is why I'm super passionate about this, I've been in talk therapy since I'm 8. I'm 33 on Friday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I learned how to like catch like what they call irrational thoughts in the talk therapy world and kind of talk myself out of those thoughts. But the problem is when you have trauma, it's like playing whack-a-mole because it's not just one thought, it's like 50. So it's like you could tell yourself like, oh, my husband must be mad at me because he's not talking to me, right? And then it's like, no, it's just because he's busy. And then it's like, no, it's because you did this. And then it's like, you're literally like sitting there playing whack-a-mole with all your, and it's exhausting. It is so mentally draining to just have, I don't know if you guys have either of you ever had anxiety?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so give me an anxious thought, Joe.
Oh God, the fact that I'm sitting here not at my business right now, and I'm like wondering if everything's going okay, and making sure that people are being greeted the right way, and people are, learning about our story and why, we're different than everybody else, and I can't control what they're saying, or I can't control everything.
Control's a big thing.
Yeah.
So,
I'm relinquishing control by being here instead of but I can't be at 3 places at once. So it's something I'm totally working through. I feel like
that was the hardest thing for me as a business owner, especially as a trauma kid, is like a letting go of control. And I've done so much better in the past year and a half because I have an amazing team of humans that are super supportive and really driven. And they do everything I tell them to do, which is fabulous. But it was hard because that's one of the ways that as anxious people, we learn how to, if we can control the situation, we feel less anxious, right? Mm-hmm. So when you relinquish that control, it's like all these factors are now outside of my control.
Yeah.
And it's scary. One of the things you actually can work on in EMDR is that anxiety in general, specifically phobias, are really great. If you have a fear of water or bugs or some other thing, works great for that. We have a couple people in our practice that have a fear of vomiting that are doing EMDR on that. We've achieved a lot of great results, but you could also do it on just plain old everyday things like imposter syndrome. Because I think when people think trauma, right, they think sexual abuse, physical abuse, something horrible really happened to you.
What is imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome. Do you really not know what okay.
No, just
for the listener?
Yeah.
Okay. So imposter syndrome. So I'm only asking Joe because we were literally talking about imposter syndrome before this started, guys. So I knew he knew about it, but
I know. Do it for the people.
Imposter syndrome is, so you basically think you're a fraud all the time. So it's like, I have this job, but I don't deserve this job. And you're so anxious that everyone's eventually going to find out that you are not qualified for the roles that you are in. And there's actually EMDR specialists that specialize specifically with business owners and imposter syndrome, which is also something I want to do one day. Because it's usually related to our childhood stuff, like our parents chronically making us feel not good enough, or we had to be the strongest, or you had to solve every problem. Everything is on you, your responsibility, all that control stuff, right? And when you grow up in a household where you're constantly told that you're not good enough, or your feelings and needs don't matter, or you have to prove yourself to achieve love, right? I think a lot of people with imposter syndrome, and I'll speak for myself because I definitely have it, it's I need to prove my worth. If I don't do A, B, C, D, E, then I'm not worth anything. And what the sad thing is most of us, even when we achieve A through E, we now just added 5 more tasks to our list that we need to now achieve before we're actually successful. So it never ends.
So you're describing me to a T.
Yeah. I'm am I in therapy right now?
No, so I'm part of a mastermind group where I meet with business owners. We do this every 2 weeks. It's a really great group of people and very supportive, and I've learned a tremendous amount. I've grown my business a tremendous amount because of those people.
Yeah.
And one of the meetings that we had, they were like, "Why are you doing this?" And my answer to why I'm building this business is so that I could prove that I could. Prove to myself that I can do it. Yeah. And then one of the guys who's in there, he's a clinical, he's clinically trained. He works for a large corporation, and he was like, that is imposter syndrome. He called me out in front of everyone, and I'm grateful for it. And he's like, that's a load of bullshit.
Yep.
He's like, you need to, if you're going to build a business and let go of things and tell have staff and have people here behind the cameras and people running the business without you, you're going to have to let go of things. You're going to have to
delegate.
Let them do delegate and let them do those things. And he's like, and that's kind of a cop-out to say that you're trying to prove it to yourself. Why don't you let other people prove themselves to you for a change? And I was like, oh.
Yeah,
it's really
I'm horrible at that.
It's a really tough thing to do.
I'm terrible.
To let
at
go
it.
of things, to trust that your managers in the store are doing what they're supposed to do, or trust that the people, while you're sitting here having this conversation, are doing a good job with their patients.
Yeah. And I have an operations director. She handles all our policy. I have a clinical director. She handles all of the clinical crises that come up. But it took a really long, like they've been with me. My operations director has been with me for 2 years. My clinical director has been with me almost 3. So, and they just got those roles, like 6 months ago, because I was finally at the point that I was like, you can't do billing and answer phones and handle every client crisis that comes up and do everyone's supervision and handle every aspect of the business and do it well. And I can do all those things well when I have enough time. But what happens when your business grows is that all of those tasks take up more time.
Right.
And then you can't do it anymore. There's not enough time to get everything done. So it's really like he said to you, like just learning to trust other people and getting people to prove themselves with you. And I think that I know for me, it's very hard for me because I have imposter syndrome and because I have trauma and I grew up with people that repeatedly let me down. It's very hard for me to like 110% trust someone on something. So then I have a wonderful business partner in another business I own in Missouri. And she said to me, Missouri, yeah. She's really funny. She goes, everyone's in Missouri, like Missouri. Like, because I always used to call it Minnesota because to me, they're all the same. It's just the flyover states, people.
We love the Midwest. We love the Midwest.
No, I went to Missouri and it's actually really, really nice. But
hard to get there though.
Yeah, there multiple flights, man. It was a lot. I was like 2 full days of travel, but really, really great. The business is in Columbia, Missouri. It's Brave Counseling and Psychiatry. They have medication management there as well. But anywho, she was saying that the way to overcome that is to really get people to give them a set of instructions with a deadline, let them do it, and then give them another. She's like, you can't just give them the whole project because at least for me, when I get overwhelmed, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to give this away. Now it's yours. But she's like, but then you didn't explain to them all the things that they needed to do. And you don't know that they're actually good at that role. And I've made that mistake in business quite a few times because I'm like, they say they can do it. And she's like, but they can't. You got to test the skill level, man. So anywho, back to what we were talking about.
So I can apply that to what I did yesterday. So yesterday I did quarterly reviews with some people in the team. And
Are they here right now?
We did half of one with Eric yesterday. We didn't have enough time to get it done. And then I did one with Matt yesterday as well. And the theme there was like, hey, I just wanted to check in personally, see how things are going.
Yeah.
Are we aligned? Your personal goals, are we still helping you reach that? And then also talk about the business. How's your role going? What are things that we can be improving on? What are things I can do to help you? And what I've been doing recently is putting people more in direct contact with our clients. I was controlling the flow of information
because it's the branding,
right? I was controlling the flow of information between clients and our team, and now I've broken down those barriers, and things just run smoother.
Yeah.
Coincidence? No.
It's because there's closed loop communication, right?
And I'm the problem. I'm the bottleneck, and I need to remove myself. And that was just something that I brought up in the conversation with Matt yesterday. Was, hey, how do you like the fact that I just threw you in a text group with someone who had a question? And he was like, do that more often. That's so much easier than me having to wait for you to be done with the meeting and all these things. And I was like, oh. It's such a simple thing, but it's one of those, like, I was the problem. I'm always the problem.
But it makes your business run so much smoother too when you work on your own anxieties and stuff, because that's what I found, at least, because then you're not operating from an irrational mindset, right? Like, because it is irrational to think that you can do every job and you can do every job the best.
Right.
And that, at least for me, it was always like, if I give it off to someone else, then that means that I didn't do it. So then then I'm still not good enough type thing. Like, if I didn't complete every aspect of this task, then it's like, it doesn't count. And going to therapy and doing a lot of my own personal work has really, really helped me to not feel that way and to find people's strengths and really like ask them what comes up for them. And even like just like being a therapist, I read micro expressions a lot. So it's really helpful for me sometimes when we like roll out a new policy to just like scan the room in staff meeting and be like, okay, I need to talk to this one and this one because they are very anxious right now and I now have to go address that.
What are some like, how can you tell that someone's anxious? I know sometimes it's very easy to see, but you said micro expressions, little things.
So
did
like,
you analyze us as you came in?
No, I was too anxious to be on here to analyze anyone. But
I was looking for a live reading.
Yeah.
we could schedule that.
She's not a palm reader.
Yeah, I'm not a palm reader.
Live,
And honestly, you probably wouldn't want me to because I'm known as a very blunt therapist. So I don't know that you'd want that on the air.
Gotcha.
I'm more of the school of thought.
She saw something.
So I'm more of the school of thought because again, since I've been in therapy so long, I've gone to all different types of therapists. And I really feel like a lot of people's opinions on therapy is just like, you're going there and whining and like nothing's getting resolved. And I will tell you that with some therapists, like, yeah, it's probably what you're doing because they're just co-signing on your, am I allowed to say bullshit? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're co-signing on your bullshit. And what really differentiates us, I think, is that I'm very clear with my staff that is not the type of practice that we have. We call people out on their shit. It's like they have to take some ownership. So working with trauma, right?
Did your arm just start talking?
Siri wants a reading too.
She said, I don't know how to respond to that.
We call people on their shit because working with trauma, you're working with a lot of people who have routinely felt not good enough, or they have issues with communication. They have issues relating to other people and building relationships. And really what therapy should be is the model of an appropriate relationship, right? Like we are supposed to be the person that is that healing relationship that has unconditional positive regard for our clients, sees the strengths in them and helps them to see them too. Because most of our clients come in and they get by the time, especially men come to therapy, they are like low, like super low, because men, for some reason in our society, don't think they need to talk to anyone. So by the time they come in our office, they're usually pretty beaten down. But it doesn't help people to just be like, you poor baby Joe, you have anxiety. That doesn't help them because it's feeding into that, like, I have no control. I can't fix this. I can't. It's like, okay, like, yeah, like maybe working. And I have not talked to Joe about his dad. So Dad, if you're listening to this, please don't take offense. I'm just giving an example.
It's probably all accurate.
But Dad, maybe Dad's really hard on Joe with the business, and then like that triggers a lot of Joe's stuff. And then, what I would say to Joe is like, okay, how do you play into those interactions? Like Dad delegates to you a task and you're uncomfortable with that task, or you think it's unfair. Do you just like co-sign on that and be like, oh, okay, and like suck it up because she's your dad? Or do you go back to him and be like, hey Dad, like, I thought this was more my role. I think this is a more appropriate task for this person, and stand up for yourself. Because what a lot of our clients do, because they're still playing into these patterns from their childhood, is they just and not just with their parents, but like with their spouses, with their colleagues, with their bosses. They repeat the same patterns over and over and over again because they never learn how to be assertive. They never learn like how to stand up for themselves or communicate in a better way. Or if they are assertive, it's usually one of two extremes, right? We have like people in the trauma world that are like super people pleasing and are going to like give you everything you want and just say yes to everything. And then like they're the people that like quiet quit your business because you didn't know that there was a problem, but because they didn't say anything to you. Right. Or you have the people that are like highly explosive and like what they're saying and their feelings and their opinions on things might be totally valid. But if someone comes to you screaming at you, like, it's just a scientific fact that when people are yelling, like we only listen like to 20% of what's being said. So if that's how you're approaching everything and that's how you're going into things and being like, oh, I am assertive. I tell them how I feel all the time. And I'll have clients say that to me. I'm like, yeah, but how did you tell them? Did you tell your husband that while you were screaming at him? Because pretty sure he wasn't listening and he was coming up with his comeback at that time. So I think that's a little bit different about what we do as well, because there are so many therapists out there that are just like, poor you.
Yeah.
Poor you. And I've had therapists like that, and that just made me feel so much more like a victim rather than a survivor. And I think it's really important that we all like own our own strengths, because I truly believe that every human being has strengths. Whether or not you're ready to execute on them is a whole nother story, but life is a journey, and hopefully eventually you get there.
So your role at your practice, is it to oversee all the therapists as well as you are a therapist, or how does it work?
So I am a therapist. I'm not currently taking new clients. I have about like 6 that are my long-term clients that I just love to work with. And we exclusively do EMDR because it's really what I'm passionate about. And all of my clients are really just wonderful humans. And then I don't oversee most of my staff anymore either. Alex Baxter is our clinical director. She does most of the clinical supervision and making sure that everyone's notes are in on time. I do more of the like what trainings we're going to go to. My staff do a lot of continuing education because, again, I think that's really important to stay up on current topics and not just be a basic talk therapist. I really want to see results. And to do that, you need education and to know what you're talking about. So I pick out the trainings. I oversee the billing staff, the receptionist staff, and I basically go to like leadership meetings and retreat meetings and different projects that we're doing. So, yeah, I wear a lot of different hats.
Yeah, for sure.
But you've let go of the practice side, it feels like.
Yeah, I let go of a lot of the day-to-day. So like this week, I am moving into a new house. So I took the whole week off and they're running it. And they know how to run it because I show them how to run it. And they're good at their jobs. And they can handle pretty much any major crises that comes up. And no one will call me unless it's like the building is burning down, which is only almost happened once, and it was because I left something in the microwave for like 30 minutes. So wasn't even on them.
Brittany's laughing in the back.
Yeah.
It was literally like I almost set the microwave on fire. The neighbors came in and were like, why is there smoke? And I'm like, oh, there's something in the microwave. It was still going and like burning. I was like, oh my God, just too many things.
So can we jump back to more about the
EMDR?
EMDR?
EMDR.
Yeah, so I feel like I cut you off at the imposter syndrome, and I want to finish what that really looks like.
So with EMDR, so it's very extensive, but basically if you were coming in for EMDR, there's 8 phases of EMDR. Like the first one is going to be like some history taking, then we move into some resourcing. So resourcing is really just making sure you have the coping skills that when we bring you to that deeper trauma, you can handle it. Because we work with people that have like sexual abuse, like really, really dark stuff. And a lot of our clients have blocked most of the bad stuff out. Like your brain will literally dissociate from those memories. And in EMDR, they can come back. So that's something that our listeners should know. The memories can come back. Not always a bad thing because it brings it back to like where you feel that in your body. So like I had a client that had like chronic chest pain, and EMDR can help to alleviate that because it was actually not medical at all. It was stress-induced chest pain. So EMDR, we do the resourcing to help you, get grounded, and then we make what we call a treatment plan. So that's going to be based off of what we think your core beliefs are. So core beliefs could be anything like, I'm not good enough, I'm responsible, I have to be in control, I'm not safe. A lot of different ones. Most of our clients with complex trauma have more than one. I have 4. I'm responsible, I'm not good enough, I have to be in control. There's one more. I don't remember what it is right now. But
I'm forgetful.
I'm also forgetful.
That's
I also have
4.
ADHD. It's probably because of my trauma. But so we go into your core beliefs and then we identify all the memories that are related to that. The nice thing about EMDR that's different from regular therapy too is we ask you for a chapter title, right? So if you say, I have a core belief that I'm not good enough, you don't need to get into depth on every memory that you have where you felt not good enough. You could literally just say to me, Christmas 94, and I'll go, okay. And I'll put that on your treatment plan. And then when we go into processing, which is phase 4, that's when we're doing that eye movement or the tapping. Most of my clients prefer tapping, or we have buzzies. We have cool stuff in my office like buzzies and light bars and headphones and all that fancy stuff because it just makes our jobs easier.
Yeah, right.
So when you go into phase 4, you don't need to even tell them then. I'm going to say, what's the worst part of Christmas 94? Joe's going to say, I don't know, dad slamming something like how angry he was. And I go,
a bottle of wine at the ground.
and he threw a bottle of wine to the ground. I'm
wasn't
going to
born
go,
yet.
okay.
You weren't alive.
I wasn't born yet.
What's the image that comes up for you? And you're like, Dad throwing the bottle of wine at the ground. Okay. Like in your body, 0 to 10, how distressing is that for you? And
9.
A 9. Okay. And then what emotion comes up for you?
Sadness.
Okay. What would you like to feel instead?
Happy. No.
Well, what would you like to believe instead? So instead of I'm not good enough, I would probably, most of my clients would say like, I'm good enough as I am, or I'm good enough regardless of their behavior.
Got it.
And then how true does that feel when you think about Dad throwing that wine bottle on the floor? 1 being totally false, 7 being totally true.
3.
A 3. I missed one thing, which is the body scan. So before we went into the positive belief, you're also supposed to say, where do you feel that in your body? Which is actually a really important part because when you do the processing, it's very interesting because you'll feel in your body like if you had tension in your
release.
chest. Yeah, sometimes it'll get tighter, especially if it's a rough memory. Like the tension, you might be at like an 8, it might go up to a 10, but it will pass through. So you'll get these like images or thoughts, or sometimes it's almost like dreamlike. I had a client once that was like, she was doing EMDR on something with her mom, and she's like, I'm just envisioning my mom building this brick wall, and I keep trying to take it down, and she keeps trying to build the wall back up. So it was almost like a dream that like was playing out in her head, and I was like, okay, go with that, and we just went. But by the end of it, your brain starts making connections to like, oh, like, you know, I was only 4 in 1994. So Dad throwing the bottle of wine on the floor had nothing to do with me. And that's just his own stuff. And like, you know, he was stressed about all these things, and, you know, he's a good guy. And it also helps you to understand. I at least for me, when I did EMDR, it helped me to understand my parents better. So doing talk therapy, I was very angry at my parents for a long time about how my childhood played out. And doing EMDR, I was able to recognize like they were both young. They both grew up in very chaotic households and did not have a good model of what parenting was. And they really did the best they could. And it helped me to like feel that internally, not just like know that logically, because I think I always knew that. But there's a difference between like what you know and how you feel, if that makes sense, guys. Like you can know that like you're a good person, but something can still happen and it still makes your chest get tight. And you're like, oh, I feel like a bad person. So it stops that body stuff from happening. And then you move on to phase 5. I told you this is very long.
No, it's okay.
And then you do the positive belief. So phase 5 is really, really important too. So after you get through that bad memory with that negative belief of I'm not good enough, we're going to go back into that same memory with the positive belief of I'm good enough regardless, and see what comes up. And what's really beautiful about that is, so I'll give you the example of when I did for EMDR on infertility. So I had to go for IVF for both of my boys. When I got pregnant with my second son, I was very nervous that something was going to go wrong. And it wasn't logical. I gave birth to my first son fine. I have no problem creating babies. I just couldn't make one on my own, right? But my brain, like I was so anxious at the beginning of his pregnancy, like this pregnancy is going to go bad, something's going to happen, I'm going to miscarry, like all of these thoughts that I know are irrational, but they were driving me nuts. And I did EMDR on it, and phase 5 with the thought of like, I think it was something about like my body is capable or something like that might have been my thought. All of these images of like giving birth to my first son and breastfeeding and like being able to take care of him, like all came to me, and it just felt in my body like so much more true, like this is going to be fine. And I was so much less anxious that second pregnancy. And that's when I was hooked on EMDR. I was like, this shit is fucking amazing.
Right. So what is the period? Is that the final phase? Sorry.
No. So there's phase 5, and then we do a body scan to make sure that there's nothing else in your body. And sometimes there's just a little bit of tension, and then we kind of tap through that. Sometimes other stuff comes up, and sometimes it just releases on its own. And then we go into closure. So we like wrap you up, make sure you're good to go. And then the next session is reevaluation. So we make sure that with that last memory that nothing else came up, because what we always say at the end of a session is the processing will continue. So what's different too is about this type of therapy. Like when you go home, like more thoughts, more images, more stuff is going to come up for you. We use a really cool app called Blueprint so that our clients can like basically tell us about their progress throughout the week, and it's HIPAA compliant, and it tracks their like all of the psych scores, like the GAD-7, the PHQ, which are testing for anxiety, depression, trauma, all that stuff. So they can communicate with us what's happening. And that last phase, we just make sure that we truly closed out that target and nothing else that's related to that core belief came up. And that's the end of EMDR.
Does that happen all in one session?
It can.
Wow.
So it can happen all in one session. I'm really, really into EMDR intensives. So intensives are like 3-hour sessions.
Wow.
I like those better personally for myself. I like them better for most of my clients, because when you come into a therapy session, just like every other person you talk, it's hi, how you doing? How was your week? Blah, blah, blah. And you shoot the shit for at least
take a half hour to get into it.
Yeah, you know, and it's hard to talk about the stuff that bothers you. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my clients will get to the 40 minutes and then they'll be like, oh, I forgot to bring this thing up that I should have talked about the entire session when I told you everything was fine. And we call that door knobbing in the therapy world. Like as they're about to leave, they're like, this major thing happened I should have talked about. So the 3-hour session allows them to like get comfortable, get in it, and then finish out the memory. Because if you do EMDR from week to week, if it's a really rough memory, like I've had clients that have done memories on sexual abuse, that have done memories on their parents committing suicide, like really, really tough stuff. It takes multiple sessions. And then because stuff does come up in between those sessions, it's harder for them to process like those rough ones from week to week. So if you do a 3-hour session, I've done a 3-hour session on a client with sexual abuse, and she managed to close it out in, I think, 2 sessions. The first one was 3 hours. The next one was an hour and a half. We did it like back to back, 2 days in a row, and she was done.
Wow.
And she was having serious, like she was getting intimate with her partner and was having like physical body, like when they went to get intimate, her body would literally like revolt. I don't know how to like just like automatically like tense and protect herself.
Yeah.
And it was really concerning to her because she's like, I like this guy, like he's not a bad guy, and like I'm gonna ruin this whole relationship because I can't like engage meaningfully because my brain is just like there's a threat and I know there's no threat.
Wow.
So we took the time to do that out, and she's no problem since. So it's really powerful. I love intensive format though. We're doing an EMDR intensive retreat in August, the 11th to the 13th. It'll be up in Monticello, New York, in a really, really beautiful house with like a hot tub and like a bunch of stuff.
Are we invited? No, I'm just kidding.
If you want to come, men are invited too. But yeah, we're going to be doing an intensive retreat.
Nice.
It'll be 6 sessions. So because most people, if you're doing an intensive, it takes about 6 sessions to process out everything.
Sure.
But the research shows that that's just as effective as going to therapy every week for a year. Like doing EMDR every week for a year. So if you could bang that out in a weekend, like people like us that don't have a lot of time, that is worth the investment, man. Because it's like, I don't want to go, like, I know for me, like, I don't want to feel these negative feelings for months on end. Like if I can just snip it in the butt, like that's what I'm all about, which is why I'm passionate about EMDR.
Do you get business owners as those types of people that go
so
on
this will be this summer we're doing our first retreats. So our first one is actually in July, so I'm not entirely sure of who's going to be there, but we do have business owners that are clients of ours that will come in and do. Actually, Christy has a client who is a business owner, and he exclusively does intensives with her because he prefers that format. It's just easier.
What percentage of therapists are practicing this way versus the traditional talking way?
I wouldn't say a lot. So on Long Island, I know of like there's a few, I don't know, there's probably like 10 or 15 like that do EMDR in their own private practice, but they're not a group. There's only one other group that I know of that really does EMDR and is like their whole practice does EMDR.
So it's not very common.
Not very common. It came about in the 90s. So it's not very common because it's a very expensive training.
Got it.
So EMDR is, so social workers don't make a lot of money, guys. Insurance doesn't pay us a lot. To be private pay is hard, and it goes against, when I had to move to private pay at my practice, it was really hard for me because I want to help the maximum amount of people possible. But what's also important is taking care of my staff. And if insurance isn't paying me enough to pay them a living wage, and most social workers, we have master's degrees and we'll get out of school and after a few years only be making like $50,000. Like, and you have like 150 grand in student loan debt. Like, it's just not manageable on Long Island. So we had to move to private pay.
That means no insurance, right?
No insurance. So it's entirely self-pay. But we give better care to our clients because we don't have to see 70 clients a week to make ends meet. Like we see like, you can max
do these
of
intensives.
30s.
You have the time to do it.
We have the time to do the intensives. We have the money to take these expensive trainings. Because EMDR, if they take the basic training, and that's another thing, there's people that say that they're EMDR therapists. They took a basic training and they have done no work since. And to me, that's kind of a misrepresentation because at my practice, we do the basic trainings. We're taking we've taken parts work trainings. We've taken all these other trainings that I'd have to probably talk for another hour to even explain them. To make sure that like we can help our clients move through things. And we also pay for consultation. We pay for someone to come in and meet with my group to be like, that's been doing EMDR for 20 years since the 90s. And she's phenomenal. Her name is Barbara. She's from Colorado. And she gives us like when we get stuck in a session, because just like therapy, like stuff comes up and clients get blocked and like it's hard to move through certain things. She'll give us like all the tips and tricks to get through it. So I would really recommend, if you're looking for a therapist, to go on emdria.org. EMDRIA is the credentialing body for EMDR.
How do you spell that?
EMDRIA.org. Because those are therapists that have truly taken like a certified training. There are other trainings out there, like PESI is a big like continuing education thing. It's like an online program. They offer EMDR training, but you're not actually certified. It's not approved by EMDRIA. It's not to their standards. And because EMDR is so intensive and can bring up so much for people, it's really important to go to someone that knows what they're doing. Because if they don't, there are people that, have not done well after it. Like if you go to a counselor who's like, all right, I'm just going to open you up and then like send you out into the world and not close all that up, help you put it away in what we call a container or bring you back down to like if you were at a 10, bring it back down to a 2 so you could function. Yeah. People have left, and not from my practice, but there are people that have like a severe increase in symptoms and they can't function because they're not ready to do it. And you're dealing with inexperienced people that aren't doing the protocol the way it should be done. And it's very, very protocol based because it's very research based. It's one of the therapies other than cognitive behavioral therapy that there's a lot of research on its effectiveness. Which is why I love it too, because it works.
Yeah. No, that's amazing.
And as a business owner, I'm all about results, man. Like I want my clients to feel like they're getting something out of therapy. I want you to feel like you're, making progress and you can see your progress. And like my favorite client came in, he had panic attacks, flashbacks, nightmares, like chronic anxiety to the point that he was like not really functioning well. And, he's now at the point that he hasn't had a panic attack in like a year. Wow. He has no flashbacks, no nightmares. Like there's still other stuff in his life that comes up for him. He has significant trauma, but he can manage his life now. Like it's not like every day is like I passed a stop sign and had a panic attack and had to pull over my car. The people we work with, like it's really affecting their life in a negative way. And this is the only treatment that I have seen that can bring you to a resolution in months, not years.
You could see the passion behind
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
it's
or
not-
days if you do an intensive.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think, normalize therapy. Like, I feel like everybody should know about it, be willing to open up and go into things like this. But now that there's EMDR, am I saying that right?
Yeah.
And other options, I mean, I feel like it's better for, more options is better for everybody.
Well, and I think more options too. Like EMDR, I think is really great for men because you don't you have to sit with your feelings, but you don't have to tell everyone what happened. So, especially men who have been sexually abused, because men have been sexually abused. And it's really, really difficult in our society for men to talk about that. So even when I wasn't doing EMDR, I would have clients come to me for 6 months and I'd be like, all right, you're good. You can graduate therapy. There's nothing going on. And they'd be like, yeah, I didn't tell you this major thing, which is the reason I'm supposed to be in therapy, because it's just so shameful, right? And the nice thing about EMDR is you don't have to tell all of those experiences to that person. You can work through it on your own with your own beautiful brain that can heal itself and not have to tell another living soul all of those intimate details that you never want to think about again. And that, I think, is really, really freeing for a lot of people, because who wants to revisit that and share that with another human being, especially as a male in our society?
Yeah.
It's difficult. But thank you for coming on and telling.
Yeah.
I mean,
Where can everybody find you?
yeah, that was going to be
so
my
you
question.
can find us at www.suffolkfamilytherapy.com. You can also listen to our radio show on 103.9 LI News Radio every Thursday at 5:30. It's called Good Enough. And you can call our office and speak with our lovely receptionist, Brittany or Megan, at 631-503-1539.
Nice.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Was it
Thank
as
you
bad as you
guys.
thought it would be?
No, it was not.
Yeah. So-